Hi, I'm Kristen, and today we're going to be making what I think I'm calling Framed Frames Quilt Block. It's a kind of a funny name because it came from a month or two ago. I don't even know how long. Anyway, I started doing these blocks, which were framed scraps. So they were mostly like a feature scrap with a little black border and then white background is what I was doing. And then I also done some the opposite way. And I wanted to do a variation of that for the Scrap Blocks Quilt Along that I've been doing. And I started experimenting with little things like this, like just what if I kept the frames going? What if we kept going with them kind of thing? And I was liking that. So for the Scrap Blocks Quilt Along, if you don't know what that is, there'll be a link up at the top or in the description. We're in week 5. It's basically just a bunch of scrap blocks, and I've come up with 2 sampler quilt layouts, one kind of row quilt and one's a bit more asymmetrical. And yeah, so this is one of those blocks, but you can also do this as a standalone block. So I'm doing 2 color versions for my quilt, and this is the one that is pink and navy. So it finishes at 12.5. The idea is that you start with a focus scrap and then we frame it and then we frame the frames. And I've got my background color is navy. So this is all different. I don't know if you can see on the camera, but it's all different navy solids. And then some accent sort of hot pink. And I'm doing another version, which I'm going to show you in this video, which is a rainbow version. So, and for that one, I'm starting with a smaller scrap. So I've got 2 options. You could start with a bigger scrap and do less outer frames, because this can be any size. This is a little, I'll show you when we start making the other block, but it's basically, it's a little bit of an improv with structure is what this is, okay? So you could start with a big scrap and just do a few. So if you imagine this butterfly was bigger and you just did a few less frames, or you could start with a smaller scrap, do some frames, and then add sashing to get it up to 12.5. Or you could just keep going with the frames. So we've got some options. What we're trying to get to is for the Quilt Along is a 12.5 inch unfinished block. So it's a 12.5 inch unfinished block for the row quilt layout and one slightly smaller 9.5 inch unfinished block for the sampler quilt. But if you are doing the Quilt Along, you'll get the email with the handout this week and it'll keep you right with which size you should be doing. If you're not doing the Quilt Along, you're just doing this as a quilt block, you can make this block really whatever size you want. So that little one is, I think, 4.5 inches, and the bigger one, as I said, 12.5, and then we're doing a 9.5 inches. So you can just kind of go whatever size you want, just keep going until your scraps are done or whatever. So because I'm not telling you what size scrap to start off with, I'm not going to tell you exact lengths of strips either, but what I'm doing here is cutting 1-inch strips, so that's the width, and just making sure that the length is at least as long as what I'm trying to attach it to as I go along. So I'm doing a kind of rainbow one here. The other one I was doing background accent, and this one I'm doing all sorts of rainbow colors. I have another way of doing the frames in the framed scraps block. That's the one with just 1 frame where you don't even have to cut the width of the scrap first. But anyway, this is my random kind of planning. I didn't know whether I was going to have enough strips to make it a 9.5 inch block. I'm just kind of going for all the colors, and I was just going to see how it went. So that's kind of how I roll with these things. So this is a center scrap. This is a smaller one than I used before. So this is 3.5 inches. And then all of these strips are 1 inch. Let's take this to the machine. We'll start with this, and we'll start with one side of the orange there. Okay, so I'm starting with in my case, 3.5 inch scrap, but again, this could be any size, okay? Could be 2.5, could be 2, could be 4, could be 5, depending what size block you want to finish up with. Now this is 1 inch strips, it's pretty thin, and it's longer than I need. We can see that, that's fine. I'll have a little crumb for a crumb block later, but I won't be cut short, which is the way I roll. So I'm gonna sew right sides together here, and then I'm gonna press and trim and add the next one. And I'll show you how I'm trimming and how that's going to keep us right as we go. It's very similar to the framed scraps block method, except that I'm cutting more precise strips to start off with. So if you saw that video, that's more of a let's not even cut anything ahead of time kind of a way. And this one is we're going to cut the strips at least to the width we want ahead of time and then go from there. Okay, so I've now pressed that. I'm going to just line up with the corner of my mat and then just line up the edge here and trim off that excess. Hopefully you can see. There we go. I think I've got you too close. I'll move you back a bit. Hang on. All right. Okay. And same the other way. So we're just trimming it to the width that we need. Okay. And then I'm going to double check here from the seam line. I want to have 3/4 of an inch, and I do, of a strip, which is perfect because I want each frame to be about 1/2 inch. So if I sew another frame with 1/4 inch on the edge, I'll have 1/2 inch of orange frame showing, if that makes sense. Okay, so that's why we're using the 1 inch strip. So if you're not sure about your 1/4 inch seam, or it's not working out for some reason, then watch the framed scraps tutorial, because with that I started with larger strips and then we trimmed down from the seam line. Doesn't make sense when I'm saying it, but when you see it, it makes sense. All right, so I'm saving this for my crumb box, and then I'm going to add to the frame on this side. So we just go, you know, like a log cabin or courthouse steps or whatever. You can go whichever way you want. I kind of go around like this, but if you wanted to do both sides and both sides, you could do that. Doesn't matter, because we're really just looking to make it look like a frame. Okay, so I'm gonna do it like this, and I'll just, you get the idea. I'm sewing, so I'm just going to sew this, press it, and come back and show you, just to make this video run a bit quicker, I think. Okay, so I sewed that side on. So I just need to trim off the excess. And you could, if you know what size your scrap is, of course you could cut your strips ahead of time to closer to the length that you want, but I'm okay with having some little crumbs. Doesn't bother me. Okay, so I've got the excess off there. We're all good. Now we've got another orange strip. So again, we're always crossing the strip we just sewed plus the next side, right? So I'm gonna line it up here, right sides together, sew my 1/4 inch, press, and come back and show you. Okay, so there's 3 sides. Okay, so now I'm gonna finish off my orange frame here with this one. So it's obviously gotta cross both of these seams, so it's gotta be at least that long, and sew right sides together. So I'm just going to trim that extra bit off. And here, and then we can move on. Right, cool. So that's orange. And next I'm gonna go yellow in my little pattern. I'm kind of following this pattern, the dots in here. And so I'm gonna cross the side that's got the 2 there. That's what I'm doing. But again, you could be doing this more courthousey steps. I have to check. I don't actually know what I did for the other ones, but this is what I feel like doing today. And you can do either way. So it'll be right sides together and keep going like that. This one I obviously cut excessively long the first time. My estimating powers. Anyway, it's fine. We'll find a use for it. So all I'm doing every time is making sure I've got straight edges everywhere, even if it's just that teeny bit. And I'm gonna move on to this one. So you can see how it makes that frame much thinner once you've sewn on the next strip. And I think that's the look that I like. So we'll see how we go. Okay, trim again. So if you are doing the quilt along with me, and obviously this is a fun block to do even if you're not, but if you are, this is block 5. And no matter which layout you're doing, you only have to do one of these blocks for your quilt this week. So if it's the row quilt, it's 12.5 inches. If it's the asymmetric sampler quilt, thank you to the subscriber who gave me that word to use, it's 9.5 inches. It's an overview sheet that you got sent with week 1 with the Quilt Along, and it should show you what size your block needs to be depending which layout you're doing. So you can just follow that. So this one only needs to be 9.5 inches, whereas the one I already made, the larger one, was 12.5 inches. So the rest of this block, it's repetitive. We are just sewing those 1-inch strips on, trimming, and going round and round and round until the block is the right size. So I'm going to speed this all up for you and give you a wider view as well in a second of the whole process, so you can see how it goes. The most time-consuming bit of it is the trimming, really. Now, this rainbow one turned out great. Those black and white ones I showed you turned out great. But I don't know, let me know what it looked like to you. But to me, the 12.5-inch pink and navy one, to me, looks a little bit stretched. Now, that could be down to how I cut the strips. Maybe I cut them differently and there was, you know, a bit too much stretch in them or something. Or maybe I've been handling them and pressing it and putting it up and down from design walls too much. I'm not sure. But if you are finding that when you're doing it, you're getting some kind of stretch, then the only things I can think of would be to maybe do it on a foundation, or I have a suggestion at the end of this video about, which I think I mentioned at the beginning, about maybe adding on sort of some more of like a sashing around the very edge so that it's not all thin strips. So see how it goes, because this has been working for me mostly, but that one block, the bigger one, I was like, I'm going to leave it. I don't mind the stretch. Well, I mean, I'd rather it wasn't there, but it doesn't bother me enough to redo the whole block. But if it's an issue for you, then yeah, there's a couple of suggestions at the end of the video around that. And also, if you are an experienced quilter and you know why that bigger one has turned out that way, or you have some ideas, please leave your thoughts in the comments. So it'll be helpful to me and possibly to others as well who are doing the same thing. So yeah, this is me just doing the last few passes. It's the pink and then the red, and then I'll show you the finished block. So I'm hoping that because we only have to do one block per layout, if you're doing the Quilt Along again with me, you should have some time to catch up on the weeks that were a little more intense and had a few more blocks in it. So if you haven't had a chance to get to your crumb blocks, or you're just falling behind, as a few of you have emailed me and told me, this is the perfect week to be catching up. And you'll get another catch-up week if you're doing the asymmetric blocks as well. Not next week, but the week after, I think. So don't worry if you're starting with us late or if you're falling behind. There's definitely some sort of padding built into the whole Quilt Along time frame, so you should be able to catch up. I'm crossing my fingers here. So, and I hope you're enjoying it. And thank you as well to those of you who've been sending in your photos that I've been sharing in the YouTube shorts every week. And go check out those if you haven't seen what other folk are doing. It's really cool to just see how all the blocks look in different colors. So here's the block. I quite like it. My only issue is this. So it's 9.5. Well, it's more than 9.5, right? So when I trim it down, I'm going to be joining right on a seam when I go and join it to something else. So I'm going to get a bit of bulk. So that was some poor planning on my part because I don't plan. So here's what I would suggest. So either you could go, all right, she used 3.5 and that didn't work, so I'm going to use 3 or 3.25 or whatever for your center scrap. Or the other thing that I might do if I was doing it again would be to measure my block as I go until I get to about 8 inches or so, and then add 2-inch strip or something all the way around, and then trim it down to 9.5, and then I've got some space around the edge to join. So the 2-inch strip would be like your background fabric, I guess, or some other, if you could do the accent fabric, you could make a choice about that. So that would be my suggestion. I am not going to change this. I'm just going to roll with it. And as a block, I really like it. So if I was going to use it somewhere else, I would be very, very happy with it. But because I want to fit it into a space that needs a 9.5-inch block, it is a little bit of a boo-boo for me. But we know I don't stress about these things. So it's going to be fine. We're going to make it work. But if you do not want to end up with that, then yeah, think about somewhere around here doing wider sashing or making this scrap smaller to start off with. And similarly, as you measure, so if you see that you're 1/4 inch off as you're going up of where you need to be, then maybe go back a strip and add something thicker just to save you having that issue with the joining. That's my suggestion. Okay, cool. So here are the two sizes, 9.5, 12.5. As I said, if I was doing it again, I might do 1 or 2 less passes around and do a sashing frame. So you decide what you want to do. Maybe have an experiment and have a play. I do really like how it looks, but I can see how more quilters who want things to be more exact might not love how these turn out always, especially my slightly stretchy 12.5 inch one. So I'm totally owning that, and I'm just telling you how I did it, and then you choose to adapt that to make it work for you. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed the video. If you are doing the Quilt Along, you will get an email with everything for this week. If you aren't doing the Quilt Along but you want to, there's a link in the description to register for the free emails and with all the links to all the past videos. And I hope to see you next time. Thanks so much for spending time with me. Bye.